And the way that we're going to bring young people back to the party is not by being conservative light and not by being unambitious for Canada.
So last night, did you catch that Leafs game? They were down 3-0 to the Bruins and came back to win the game in overtime on a goal by Mitch Marner. But also last night was the Liberal leadership debate, which I watched this morning because of priorities. But there was a standout during this debate that I don't think a lot of people were expecting, and I'm going to discuss who that standout was with a few clips. But let's be clear before we jump into that standout. This debate largely was incredibly boring. That isn't to say that's a bad thing. I think it was clear in terms of the professionalism, in terms of the leadership capabilities. Everybody on that stage in that Liberal debate is well above where Pierre Poilievre is. And I think that is going to become even more clear when the actual Liberal leader is chosen and we get some more back and forth. But I do want to discuss the fact that there is one person that's going to win this race. Almost certainly, at least that's the way it's being discussed, unless Liberal members are really feeling a lot differently than what the money is saying, than what media is saying. It seems to be clear that Mark Carney is going to win this leadership race, and based on polling, he is best poised to lead the Liberals to a potential victory, at least as of this point, over Pierre Poilievre. And polls show Liberals just generally as well. I mean, look at the massive change since Trudeau announced that he's going to step down as leader, as well as the Trump inauguration. It has had a massive impact on how Canadians feel about where their vote's going to go. So Liberals are now leading with 38.4% to the Conservatives at 37%. And the Conservatives were up by like 20, 30 points maybe at one point. It's completely turned around. Now, this gets to the standout from last night. Karina Gould. That's actor Elliot Gould. That's comic and writer Dana Gould. That's farina, a popular milled wheat product that can be used for hot cereal, porridge, baking, and cooking proteins. No, Karina Gould. So this is somebody who I was aware of, but not very aware of, because why would I need to be? But this is somebody who really did stand out last night, and I'm going to play a few clips. Now, I got to say, for half my audience, at least, is American. They're going to watch these clips, and actually, I was going to say you wouldn't be impressed because there's not many fireworks going on here. But maybe that's why you'll be impressed, because you're going to see somebody who is incredibly competent. It may not be something you're very used to. But let me start with this first clip here, where she is discussing that the Liberal Party needs to have some bigger ideas if they're going to connect with people.
You know, when my colleagues talk about households, I talk about families. When they talk about, the macro picture, I talk about what it means for individuals. And I'm so proud that I was able to deliver affordable childcare for families across this country. And I would expand that to include before and after school care as well. But when we're talking about people who are going to food banks, we're talking about the most vulnerable in our society. A middle-class tax cut or removing the GST on new homes isn't going to help those folks. But you know what will? Modernizing our social safety net, making sure that seniors who live on a fixed income, persons with disabilities, folks who have lost their job, who need support to retrain and rebound are better off. And that's why I'm talking about opening a path towards a basic income. Poverty costs money. That's why we need to work to eliminate homelessness. It's why I would work with provinces and territories to have specific accords to ensure that folks who get into housing can stay stable and that they can enter the workforce and join and be prosperous.
Now, a basic income is something that has been discussed here and there for decades at this point. How you implement that, I think, is the most important thing. If you're removing the social safety net and replacing it with a basic income, that's going to be a problem, because the cost of everything is just going to rise by that basic income. It has to be a basic income on top of the other supports that still exist and remain well-funded and strong. But I do like the fact that Karina Gould is actually introducing some different ideas, some concrete ideas into this leadership debate. And it's worth noting, she mentioned their affordable daycare. Karina Gould was part of the, I mean, she was the, let me get her proper title here at the time, the Minister of Families, Children, and Social Development at the time that $10 a day childcare was being signed with the provinces. This has had a directly positive impact on my life. I know it has had a direct impact on many lives. I mean, it cut the cost of childcare more than half of what it was. So this, more moves like this, I think, is what the Liberal Party both needs to be able to communicate in terms of what they have done, how they have helped people, because there's all this discussion, oh, everything's more expensive, which it is. Let's be clear. Everything is more expensive. But why? A large part of that is the greed of massive corporations and the current government's inability to deal with that. It's not because of the carbon tax, which we'll get to later on, because that was also brought up, but it's because of the greed of these massive corporations to prioritize profit over everything else. And it is the role of the government to help control that, because a corporation is going to do what a corporation does. It's going to make as much money as it can within the law. You have to put restraints on that. But I just want to mention that, the fact that she was a part of this, one of the best things that the Liberal Party in government has done, is quite an accomplishment, and one that she should continue mentioning. Let me get to the next clip.
In 2015, Justin Trudeau swept to power in large part because young Canadians, they liked him, they voted for him. But fast forward to today, that age group is really moving towards the right. What will you do as Prime Minister to win back the support of that age group?
I was actually a young person in 2015, and I was excited about what the Liberal Party of Canada was offering, and I was excited about Justin Trudeau's leadership. And you know why? Because it was a bold, ambitious plan for our country. It was progressive. We were going to fight. We fought climate change. We talked about new ideas to move this country forward. And the way that we're going to bring young people back to the party is not by being conservative light and not by being unambitious for Canada. It's going to be by having bold ideas for this country where Canadians feel inspired and hopeful about the future that we're going to have.
All right, so in a second here, I'm going to get some data showcasing the massive shift within young people from 2015 to now. But Karina Gould's point here is exact. If you want to reach out or you want to inspire people to come out to vote for you, you have to offer bold ideas, a bold vision, something different, something that people can latch onto, that can tell them that their lives are going to change, be different, improve under your leadership. Now, of course, the specifics of that matter. There weren't too many specifics there, though there was a larger answer there about housing and the Liberals' attempts to try and make housing more affordable. But again, I don't think there needs to be a much bolder vision on housing specifically as well, as it applies to social housing. And looking at, I've mentioned this before, looking at Vienna in Austria, the most livable city in the world, it's consistently voted that way. The most livable city in the world, and what they have done with affordable social housing. That should be a model for the rest of the world. So the Canadian government needs to look at that. But I want to showcase this massive change because it has been wild. So this article is from 2015 or 2016, right after the 2015 election. The final poll of the campaign by Nanos Research found the Liberals with 38% support among young Canadians aged 18 to 29, compared to 24% for New Democrats and just 23% for the Conservatives. Fast forward to today. It is right here. 41% support for Conservatives, those aged under 35. 21% for the Liberals compared to where they were before at 38%. 20% for the NDP. Not a huge shift there, down from 24. But look at the massive growth that the Conservatives have made. Now, part of this, of course, is due to algorithms, quite honestly. The Andrew Tates of the world, the complete right-wing lunatics that have been propped up by algorithms that prioritize, shock value and all this trash. Joe Rogan, who has gone completely off the deep end for the past 10 years, as somebody who used to watch him when he was normal. Um, this sort of shift has, I think, helped to lead us to this place. Now, you also, you may argue, hey, but if you add up the liberals and the NDP, because they're both, you can argue center to center left, then you match the conservatives and you add on the Greens, maybe most of them there. It's more than the conservatives. Sure. But again, look at where it was. 38 for the liberals, 24 for the NDP, 23 way in last place for the conservatives. I just think clearly things have changed. So in lieu of, outlawing algorithms in our world, these parties, the Liberal Party needs to do a lot more to reach out to people. The NDP, I think, have remained consistent because their sort of principles haven't changed. I don't think Jagmeet Singh is the right leader. I think it's very clear they are right now losing support. Get back to that poll. Their support is dropping as the Liberals are benefiting. Part of that also, to be fair, is not just because of the NDP leadership. It's largely because people want to avoid Pierre Poilievre. And the threat from Trump is making things even more dramatic. So people who otherwise would vote for the NDP because they believe in their values are moving towards the Liberals simply as a way to avoid Pierre Poilievre in the worst case scenario for Canada. Now, let's get to the last clip.
Well, politics is also about leadership, and it's also about conviction. And I'm not going to abandon the fight against climate change because Pierre Poilievre is telling us to do that. I'm a mom of 2 young kids. I cannot leave a planet that is burning to them. I got into politics in 2015 because I wanted to be part of a government that fought climate change. And we did that. And we did that to great effect. And I am proud of that record. But I hear Canadians when they say that this policy is something that is challenging for them. And you know what? We didn't do a good job of talking about it. And when they are talking about the carbon tax, what are they talking about? They're talking about affordability. That's why we need a real affordability plan. It's not that they're against fighting climate change or they're against protecting the environment, but that also means that if you don't have the price on pollution, you don't have the rebate checks that millions of Canadians depend on every single year. If you have a plan to fight climate change, you also need to have a plan to fight affordability.
So this is a very clear difference between Karina Gould and the other leadership candidates, and one that I think the others should take note of but aren't going to because it's too late now. The carbon tax, which Karina understands is not the issue. In fact, I've discussed this several times now at this point in many videos, but carbon pricing is not to blame for Canada's affordability challenges. I will link to this below the video. You can read through it all yourself. Most families receive more in rebates than they pay in carbon taxes. So using Stats Canada's latest data, we estimate that the median annual net cost of carbon taxes for households in Ontario in 2023 was negative, around minus $300, meaning that most households received $300 more in rebates than they paid in carbon taxes. The carbon tax is obviously not the problem with affordability. It has nothing to do with grocery stores gouging you. It has nothing to do with the cost of homes. The carbon tax is not the problem. But because Pierre Poilievre can't tell you that the problem is capitalism and the greed of massive companies that he supports, he focuses on the carbon tax as the issue and has made it such a toxic thing that liberal candidates, who are the ones that brought in carbon pricing, are now saying they're going to take it away, even though they also know it's not the issue. It's frustrating to see how easily bullshit right-wing propaganda latches onto people. And if only there was at least some pushback. I know there's a little pushback, but really, push back on this trash on a consistent basis. The Liberal Party has failed to do that. Others have failed to do that. The media has failed to do it. And in lieu of that, you have a bunch of people in the country thinking that the carbon tax is the problem when it has never been the issue. But this just gets to, I think, Karina Gould showing that you can't be afraid to stand up for the facts, for reality, for what actually is going to help people and help the world at the same time. But let's be clear again. Mark Carney is almost certainly going to win this leadership race. That said, it would be good to see Karina Gould at least make second place as maybe sort of a message to the entire Liberal Party that they can't just keep doing the status quo and expect to keep winning.